So my name is Doug Gordon. I'm CEO of DNS Performance Optimization. And today I'm going to be talking about how I triple my sales to 1.75 billion and how you can too. So before I start, can I just ask, hands up, anybody in sales? Is that all? You should all be putting your hands up. Everybody is a salesperson. Even as a child, you start off trying to sell for that ice cream or that extra time with the TV or whatever it is. Then you move into your late teens or early 20s and you're trying to sell yourself to girls or men in terms of girlfriend or boyfriend or husband or wife. We're all salespeople. Then we move into business and we're trying to sell to our CEO, or as the manager of the team, we're trying to sell to our team. And we're also trying to sell to clients to make them buy our products as well. Sales is all about people. How many people here have ever walked into a meeting with someone and come out feeling a little bit drained? Anybody? Yeah? Or how many people here have been to a do like this at the end of the week, but at the start of the week you really didn't feel like going? But you made a pact with yourself, you go along, you maybe come home at about maybe 10 o'clock, but then you arrive and the joy, the happiness, the laughter, next minute you're dancing your socks off and you feel fantastic the next day. Anybody had that? Yeah? What is that? Well, it's energy, of course, dissipating from one person to the next. If you optimize your energy, you can optimize your performance in life. So let's optimize a little bit of energy. If I can ask you all to stand up, and I've asked you could a handshake or high five someone you haven't met before. Right, thank you. Right, now that you've all introduced yourself, if you don't mind, I'm just going to introduce myself. My name's Doug Gordon. I worked in the investment management industry or the fund management industry for 21 years. And before that, though, I was actually an engineer. And I worked for a company called Chamberlain & Hill. And I don't know if anybody knows Chamberlain & Hill, but they're an iron foundry. And there's soot everywhere. And I used to walk in a suit like this. I was the quality manager. And by the end of the day, I'd come out caked in soot. Head to toe, up my nose, everything. And my girlfriend at the time took one look at me and said, "There's no way I'm coming near you." So I thought, right, maybe I might have a change of heart and have a look at something else in another industry. And at the time, I was being mentored by the CFO of Chamberlain & Hill, and I asked him, how much does the CEO earn? And he said about 150 grand. And I found out from a friend of mine that the CEO at Fidelity earned 4.2 million that year. So I thought, right, well, if I become a secretary in that side, maybe I might do better. So I moved into the investment management industry, and I worked my way up from customer services with Fidelity to sales support, to sales manager, to sales director, and then head of sales and marketing and board director of Davy Asset Management. And all that time I was selling mutual funds, which are basically portfolios of stocks and shares. So I sold everything from stocks and shares to bonds to commercial property to hedge funds to private equity funds. You name it, I sold it. And I sold it to everyone from financial services to institutional pension fund managers. And my first tip that I'd say that I really realized while I was selling is that when I sold to a financial advisor, I might get maybe 500,000 from them. From a stockbroker, maybe 2 or 3 million. From an asset manager, maybe 10 million. From a global bank, maybe 100 million. And an institutional pension fund manager, one gave me 285 million in one hit. So what I realized that I was using the same presentation all the time to very similar people, but I realized that when you value your services and hang around with the right people, you get very different results. So really target your clients and really understand exactly who you're seeing each and every single time. In 2008, obviously markets hit. I suffered from a lot of stress and we lost 3.3 billion in about 6 months and I had to lay off a lot of my team. And at that point in time, I got really stressed to the extent where I needed 2 operations at the end of 2009 that went horribly wrong. For the next 3 or 4 years, I was having a lot of pain, agony, depression, stress. And then in 2012, I had a near-death experience where I actually died and then came back. And at that point, my whole ethos changed. I changed from being all about bringing in sales and bringing in money to suddenly wanting to add value to people's lives, to help people. And at that point, I set up a business called DNS Performance Optimization. And that business is all about coaching, consulting, and corporate training. And I coach a lot of CEOs within Ireland, England, and America. And I do a lot of corporate training, especially in the hedge fund world and the asset management world as well. And I've got some great feedback. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see that feedback as well. But how do we make this happen? How do we make sales? How do we triple our sales? And I have a radio show on Dublin City FM called Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. And I always use the acronym of MAKE. And that's mindset and motivation, actions and activities, knowledge in terms of know your client, know your product, know your market, but also have a knowing faith in yourself. And then finally, energy and enthusiasm. If you optimize your energy, you can really optimize your performance in work and in life. So I'm going to go through these one by one, starting with mindset. Most of this you probably have heard before, but there's some little bit of tips that I might be able to add a little bit of value through. So motivating yourself. Most people, when they wake up in the morning after having done the same job for many, many years, they wake up going, bollocks, not another day in the office. And they drag themselves out of bed and drag themselves into the office. What way is that to start the day? I always say to people, get up with a bit of inspiration in your belly. Get up having gratitude for everything you have. Be grateful for your house, your children, your wife, your husband, everything you have. Because gratitude brings content. Gratitude brings positive thinking. Then on top of that, when I was going to see all these clients all the time, I would visualize having a good meeting with them. I would have a vision that I was going to go in there and I was going to have a really successful meeting. And self-talk is something very important as well. When I was going into the meetings, I'd be going, I am going to have a fantastic meeting with this person. I am going to add a massive amount of value to him. I am the best salesperson in the industry. And by the end of the year, I was. And what I'm doing here is I'm creating what they call a knowing mindset, getting myself into a state where I'm ready for the job. Because so many people, when they go into sport, they're in the state, they're in the flow. And McKinsey have done a 10-year study proving that people, if they're in the flow or the state, they're 500% more productive than if they're not. So that's 1,000% in 2 days. So really try and get yourself into the state before you go into any meeting. People do it in sport all the time, but they don't do it in business. And then have the intention of adding value to other people. In 2012, when I actually tripled my sale to 1.75 billion, that was the same year that I had my near-death experience. I thought I was a gunner that year because my health was so bad. So I was so humble that my whole energy and ethos was about giving and adding value to others. It wasn't about me and my sales. And I think that energy came across. And naturally, that's why I was so successful that year. But you do need to be persistent. I mean, let's face it, I think it was Edison, he took 10,000 goes to perfect the light bulb. And in sales, we have to be persistent in terms of making sale after sale after sale or call after call after call to eventually make a meeting and then make the sale. And also have a growth mindset. There's many businesses over here, especially in Ireland, that after 2008, they got really fearful about loss of their money and really fearful about cost. And they're concentrating on cost. And they're concentrating on what the competition were doing. And when you concentrate on that, it's like you're focusing on that. And where focus goes, energy flows. So focus on growth and what you want to achieve rather than what you don't want to achieve. There was a company I knew in England called Vestra Wealth. Group of guys, 10 of them left UBS, set up their own business. They bought a floor for the 10 of them for 150 people. Some of the sales guys who were going there thought they were mad. But within 3 years, they were moving out of that office because they'd filled it and they'd grown so much. So have the intention for growth. It's really, really important. When you set that intention, you'll get it. And also learn from success. I said about my radio show, which I do, called Inspirational People, Inspirational Stories. The reason why I did that is to interview some inspiring, amazing people. I've had the likes of Stuart Lancaster, the Leinster coach, on. I had Gary McCann, the chairman of Paddy Power, used to be CEO of Aer Lingus. The reason why I do it is to understand how these people became successful, so I can use that in my coaching to help the likes of you. I put first class travel. This is really linked to the fear of cost. Now, a lot of people are fearful of spending too much money when they first start off, but actually, when I was traveling first class or business class, I always sat next to someone interesting. Maybe a CEO or a sheikh or something like that. And I sat next to one CEO who we became friends with. We ended up then, he got me into his business and he paid me thousands to speak to his business and to coach him. So being in the right place with the right people at the right time could change the path of your business. And that's why I really recommend traveling first class or business class. In terms of action or activity, anybody seen this film? Yeah? In the Pursuit of Happiness. At this point, Will Smith has his phone like this, and he's literally pressing the receiver on and off and making another call. He never takes the receiver away from his ear. And I used to do this as well. It's all about call after call after call. But you can't just call aimlessly. You obviously need to put a plan in place. Business plans are incredibly important. Most businesses do a business plan. But they do it and they write it down and they leave it then, and at the end of the year they see if they've actually done what they said they're going to do at the start of the year. I mean, what is the point of that? You should be looking at your business plan to put a target in place for the end of the year, but also quarterly targets, monthly targets, weekly targets, and actually target something every day that achieves what you're looking to achieve at the end of the year. You also need to client map as well. You need to know, like I said, it's all about hanging around with the right people. I had a client called Jupiter Asset Management. Jupiter, in their fund of funds, had 12 billion. I had a European equity fund, which I knew they were interested in. So I had a look at their allocation to their European equity side of things. It was 1.2 billion. They had 4 funds in that section. And I knew that if I was to replace one of those funds, I was going to get 300 million. So every single time I was in that meeting, I knew that meeting was worth 300 million. So I really suggest to you, work out what every single meeting is worth, because time is money. And you want to be getting the most amount out of every single meeting you have. And in terms of time, activity mapping is incredibly important. Time mapping on every single day was important to me. And I would start my most important meeting of the day at lunchtime, because whether you're a CEO or a fund researcher, everybody has to eat, right? And even if they don't and they go and play squash or go to the gym, go with them. So I matched my number one meeting every single day at lunchtime, and then geographically, if there was someone close by, I would look at maybe 11 o'clock at 12:30 for the lunch, and then 2:30 as well. So you're optimizing time. And then I'd suggest doing your admin in the morning when you're fresh, and then in the afternoon when you're in the flow, because you've been talking about business, you've been talking about economy, you're talking about the market, and you've got a lot of knowledge that you can share with other clients, then do your calls. Do your calls in the afternoon. The other thing is, most of us are a bit happier in the afternoon because we know we're going home in a few hours. So give them a call in the afternoon. My best times for calling people was actually Friday afternoon. Some people say Wednesday afternoon. Some people say Thursday afternoon. If you want to get a CEO, sometimes maybe 7:30 in the morning. And then in terms of social media is incredibly important now, as we know. I have 21,000 LinkedIn contacts on there. I use that because when I put a post out, I sometimes get 20,000 clicks, 20,000 views. And that has helped me get a lot of business. On LinkedIn, for example, I probably got 40 grand's worth of business just through posts and social media, telling people that I'm doing things like this. As well as that, get your team or yourself, get articles out. Articles are the cheapest way of advertising. There's so many publications out there that are dying to get new content. So use them. Send them ideas, send them interesting articles, and you can use that as free advertising as well. In terms of knowledge, know your client, know your product, and know your market. Before every single meeting, I'd go on LinkedIn and see what my client was interested in. Where did they go to school? Did they play sport? What charities did they follow? And then I had a look at their interests and needs. I had a look at what kind of funds they had in their portfolios. I looked at their individual portfolios and looked at the investment style that they had, so that I knew exactly what they were looking for when I went and see them. And if I didn't, I made sure that I had a questioning sheet there so that I could pick up the rest of the answers. It's all about matching your client's needs to your product's USPs. Never, ever, ever knock the competition as well. In fact, I would encourage you to go and get to know your competition and become friends with them. I used to meet with another sales director or sales manager every single week, because it's really important to know what's going on in the market. You might get some tips because they might be looking after a client longer than you. They might be able to tell you something, but also you might have a product that they don't have, and vice versa. So you can add value to your clients. So I would go into certain clients and I'd say, look, I've got a really good UK equity or European equity fund, but I don't have an American equity, or I don't have an Asian equity, or whatever. And then that way I could then pass on a referral to one of my peers in a different company. And it gains trust, because sales is all about trust and adding value to the client. Highly recommend that. Also, where there's competition, there's a sense of lack, sense of going for the same thing. Whereas if there's collaboration, you can create new things by working together. Finally, energy and enthusiasm. As I said earlier, optimize your energy to optimize your performance in life. So many people, for sport, they spend so much time preparing, practicing, making sure they eat the right food for a game of hockey like I used to play. But when it then comes down to it for the job, they might have a few drinks the night before, walk into a meeting and not even care. Take your job seriously. The more energy you have, the more positive energy you have, the more positive mindset you have. And the more energy makes you more active, which means you can do more with your clients and in your job. And then obviously you can get more done in less time with less stress. A few examples. So I used to look after JP Morgan. And as it says at the top there, a 7-minute walk led to a $1 billion account. There was a lady who was a fund researcher from JP Morgan in New York. She came across to London to interview about 10 Asian fund managers, Asian equity fund managers. She came into our office. It was the end of the day. She finished up with our fund manager, and she walked out and she wanted to get back to the West End where the JP Morgan office was. And she asked where she could get a taxi. And I suggested 4 o'clock in the city, don't get a taxi. Get the tube, it's around the corner. She goes, oh, I don't know where it is. I said, let me show you. So in those 7 minutes that I walked with her around there, I got to know her in a much more personal fashion. And I know that my fund was not necessarily the best fund. And I know that my fund manager was not necessarily the most inspirational fund manager to listen to. But she went for us. Now, we didn't get $1 billion straight away. We obviously had to build that up. So as the sales director at the time, I had sales managers right across the globe looking after JP Morgan offices like in Hong Kong, in New York, in Switzerland, wherever. And I had to make sure and manage the time to make sure that the fund managers weren't in Hong Kong one day, New York the next day, and then London the next day. So very important to act when you're a sales director is like the octopus effect, managing all different people right across the firm. And it's all about collaboration and teamwork to make sure you have the right knowledge about that account. So we used to use Salesforce, which is fantastic. We used to put everything on Salesforce. And then I used to tweet, and when people did good things, I used to say, well done on that and well done on this. Really, really important. And a lot of energy behind the whole thing as well. Jupiter, another example. Jupiter in 2011 had 250 million in our Threadneedle emerging market debt fund. In 2011 August, we had a rogue trader. It's in the press. I'm not giving anything away. And the FCA were all over the team like a rash. And then at the end of 2011, they got fed up. And they left in April 2012 to go to Standard Life. Everybody bar one guy who was a Brazilian fund manager left. And the only reason why he didn't leave is because he could hardly speak English. So because of his communication channels, they didn't take him with them. Management thought we were screwed. Because obviously having a fund with no driver is like having a race car and Ayrton Senna or someone like that leaving. But I rang the client straight away before the press release had gone out and told them what had happened. Told them that we were promoting the guy straight into the driving seat. Told them we were going to be looking for more people on the team. And also told them that we'd make sure that we'd look after them in all ways possible. On top of that, because when you're in an open-ended investment company, a structure, a fund company, I knew that if they moved within our fund structure, instead of moving away, they'd save on capital gains tax. So I gave them an option because I knew they were interested in our European equity fund. So we repitched for the business. I brought in the new fund manager. I also brought in our European equity guy, and we won both. And from almost losing 250 million, we went from getting an extra 200 million that year into the emerging market debt fund, and we got 300 million into the European equity fund as well. You can look that up in their fact sheets to prove it. So I took an opportunity mindset in a situation that could have gone horribly wrong. Finally, Scottish Widows Investment Partnership, which has since been bought out, it's now called Standard Life Aberdeen. That was an account that I looked after for 5 years and didn't get a bean. I wined and dined and golfed, did monthly updates, met all the team, not just the areas that I was looking after in terms of different funds and asset allocation areas, but I met the whole team and added as much value as possible to them. And then eventually, after 5 years, they needed a mandate that I actually had that actually could add value to their portfolios. And who do they call? It wasn't Ghostbusters, it was me. So we ended up getting a seg mandate in one go for 285 million. So it just shows that persistence and never giving up can really lead to a really good sale. And in that year, in those 3 clients that I mentioned, as I said, I got 530 million from Jupiter, 285 million from these guys, and I got about, again, 300 million from JP Morgan as well. So a lot of business coming in just from 3 targeted accounts and putting a lot of effort in there as well. So in conclusion, have the right mindset. Have a knowing mindset that you're going to achieve your results. Take massive action and know your client, know your product, and know your industry so you can match your client's needs to your USPs and then optimize your energy to optimize your performance in life. Everything in life is energy. Thoughts are energy. Speech is energy. Thoughts leads to speech, speech leads to actions, actions leads to habits, and habits leads to destiny. So think smart, talk smart, work smart, and if you're really smart, you'll get me into your business to help you with coaching, consulting, and training.